From that moment on, as we have repeatedly emphasized, the regional conflict in Ukraine, previously provoked by the West, acquired elements of a global nature. Putin makes an urgent appeal. It was not announced. Even the Russian media called it that. Let's see what the Russian dictator was talking about right now. In the end, Putin said that Russia allegedly did not strike the territory of Ukraine with a Rubish missile, as the Ukrainian side had previously claimed, but with a missile called Oreshnik. In response to the use of U.S. and British long-range weapons, on November 21st this year, the Russian armed forces launched a combined strike against one of the facilities of the Ukrainian defense industry. In combat conditions, one of Russia's newest medium-range missile systems was tested, among other things. In this case, with a ballistic missile in a non-nuclear hypersonic configuration. Our rocket scientists called it Oreshnik. He says that this missile can travel 2.5 to 3 kilometers per second. That's how he described it. And Putin is supposedly not worried at all that any air defense system can shoot down this missile. Although again, I look at how the Biden administration has behaved over these 3 years and how cautiously it has been in the context of helping Ukraine. And frankly, especially given that just recently Biden had his meeting with Xi Jinping in Peru, after which he announced a deliberate authorization for long-range strikes. I believe that these things may be related, and the U.S. could have calculated. This development could not have been a secret from the world's intelligence agencies, because Putin always says when he holds his annual forum, Army 2024 was this year, that we have a new achievement, we have new partners, we have Iran buying our weapons, which have no analogs in the world. But then, as we see, with the help of our partners and the Ukrainian defense forces, these weapons, which have no analogs, continue to have no analogs somewhere in the ground. Yes, and Iran, by the way, which has also already abandoned the Russian one, has no analogs of air defense, and Iran is now abandoning this Russian development, so to speak. Russian spokeswoman for the so-called foreign ministry, Zakharova, received a call during a briefing. She was asked not to comment on the attack on Ukraine by an intercontinental ballistic missile, but she didn't know how to step away from the microphone. She didn't have the brains. So we can hear this order later. So the news.ru portal is with us. Yes, hello. Masha? Yes, I have a briefing.
Так. Привіт. Маша? Так, у мене брифінг.
Don't comment on the ballistic missile attack on Yuzhmash at all. Yes, okay, thank you. Direct evidence of the terrorist activities of the occupation forces, and it's live, it's all recorded. I am sure that this evidence, in particular, should be the evidence base to bring these terrorists to justice. Mr. Oleg, Netolife caught a piece of Maria Zakharova's briefing, who had previously commented on the resilience plan of Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, but there is an interesting moment where Zakharova is heard on the microphone receiving a call, apparently from the Kremlin, saying, "Masha, keep quiet about the ballistic missile strike on the Dnipro," to which she says, "Okay." Putin's spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov, says, "It's not up to me at all. He always says, I don't want to comment on anything provocative." He says, "This is for the Ministry of Defense. Why doesn't Russia boast that it could have launched an RS-26 Rubesh into Ukraine or any intercontinental ballistic missile? No matter how dangerous, why don't they just do it because it only hit the garage cooperatives? Or is Putin afraid that Xi Jinping is calling now, not Scholz?" You know, the situation here is very similar to bipolar, because when you use some kind of weapon, You have to be prepared for the fact that not only the victim, but also your neighbors, who are your friends, who are not friends, will know about it, but they clearly know that it happened. And why I say bipolar, because by and large, it was a hypothetical response to the fact that Biden had given birth to his authorization, and we are already using certain missiles on the territory of the Russian Federation, and Putin had to respond. But this is where the bipolar comes in. What does it consist of?
Ракети по території Російської Федерації, і Путіну треба було відповісти. Але отут і включається біполярка. В чому вона полягає? В тому, що ми должны отомстить.
The point is that we have to take revenge, and we take revenge the way we always do, so that everyone can see what we can do, like hold me down because I'm stupid, I have nothing in my head, you see what I can do, and I can do even worse, so let's negotiate with me. But to what extent does the world now have to be afraid, rather than in control, of the fact that Putin signed the updated nuclear doctrine on Tuesday? Is it testing non-nuclear preliminary launches on our territory, and should we react to this? Or, on the contrary, should we not pay attention, so as not to give the aggressor a reason to understand that it can actually use some more tactical nuclear weapons, or even greater escalation, although we have already seen everything? In fact, we need to react, and we have seen a certain reaction from the American embassy, not just the American embassy in Kyiv. That is, they took the information they received seriously. And so I think that by analogy, we should take seriously the fact that Putin is demonstrating his nuclear soar, that he can do anything. Again, he's showing me that I'm crazy. And this should actually stimulate, I think, Trump, because he sees a person who is inadequate, who is threatening.
І це насправді повинно стимулювати, як на мене, Трампа, тому що він бачить перед собою людину, яка неадекватна, яка загрожує, а Трамп, як і
And Trump and his son and Musk, they are very afraid of World War III. And here it may be simply because Putin does not care when it is done. He demonstrates his unpredictability and unwillingness to communicate normally, as they would like to sit down at the negotiating table in a diplomatic way. This for you, this for him. Everyone is unhappy. Everyone is a little bit happy. We're breaking up, the war is over. No, Putin has demonstrated that he is not predictable. But there is one more element here, that he is not ready to use nuclear weapons. I will say cynically, and thank God that he is like that. I did not think that I would ever say about God and him in the same phrase. But if he were a macho man, nuclear weapons would be used. Tactical nuclear weapons would be used. And that's it. And everything that the West fears, then it would be realistic. He has shown that he is far from macho. Other letters, we will not voice them. But this is still a signal to the world that it is necessary to kick him in the teeth. And there is only one way to kick him in the teeth now, to enable Ukraine to get a just peace. And this will be a victory for Trump and anyone else. As Merkel is now justifying why she did this, there is no need to justify herself. We need to do the right thing now. Now we have a situation with an inadequate person, with an inadequate country. If there is in any society, with all due respect to people with disabilities and so on, some inadequate person who goes beyond the mental health of his and poses a danger to others, it is unlikely that they give him flowers and bring him candy and say, "Please sit down, don't kill that uncle." If you have already killed him, then don't kill him. It doesn't happen like that. He is immediately closed off from society, and that's it. So now Russia is this sick person who has simply lost its shores and is demonstrating its unpredictability, and it is necessary to close it off from society. To limit the communication of this, let's say, cancerous tumor called the Russian Federation with the civilized world, because the metastases are already scattered all over the world. We can see it perfectly well. If we continue to play with this, there will be irreversible processes. Hungary deploys air defense systems near the border with Ukraine. The reason is that our state is allowed to hit the territory with Western missiles. They argue that the Russian-Ukrainian war has entered its most dangerous phase. This was stated by the Minister of Defense of Hungary. According to Christopher Chalet Bobrovnitsky, the scale of the Russian-Ukrainian war is now larger than ever. That is why he ordered the deployment of air defense in the northeast of the country due to fears of an escalation of the Russian-Ukrainian war after Kyiv was allowed to strike deep into Russia with Western weapons. Let me remind you that on Sunday, during Russia's massive missile attack on Ukraine, when several Russian missiles were shot down near the border with Hungary, the Hungarian Foreign Minister Peter Szijjártó said that it was necessary to, and I quote, to step up efforts to bring peace closer. And after news of the lifting of long-range restrictions on Ukraine, Szijjártó accused the current U.S. administration of threatening to expand the war. The RF threatens to strike at the U.S. air defense base in Poland. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs says that this facility is on the list of priority targets. In particular, this statement was made today by Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Zakharova. On November 13th, the U.S. Navy base in Redzikowo, northern Poland, was inaugurated. It's the first U.S. forces facility in Poland. It is equipped with a missile defense system that can detect, track, and destroy ballistic missiles at the initial stage of their approach. Because of this, Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova threatened Warsaw and Washington. According to her, the American base in Poland has long been among the priority targets for potential destruction by the Russian occupiers. According to Zakharova, the West has been pulling NATO's military infrastructure to Russia's borders for many years. And this is a destructive practice and increases the level of nuclear danger. Zakharova's words were quoted by the TASS propaganda agency. After the opening of the base, Polish President Andrzej Duda said that Poland is safe as a NATO member, even despite the war unleashed by Russia in neighboring Ukraine. Zelensky said that after the direct involvement of Russia's autocratic allies, it can be considered a war, that the Third World War had begun, but that there was still a chance to change everything. Now we see that the administration of the current U.S. President Biden has gradually begun to demonstrate the strength that was sometimes lacking in previous years. Do you think this trend will continue in the next administration, i.e., the Trump administration? Let's start with an assessment of the situation. I do not believe that the Third World War has begun. If we proceed from clear parameters, as we know in principle, on basic issues of international relations and security issues, according to the signs that are now present, it cannot be called the Third World. But it seems that all these textbooks are outdated, because we can call it reaching the geopolitical level, involving other countries through various hybrid means. So perhaps, if we are talking about the level, then yes, this is going global, and these are the main changes that have taken place. That is, one thing must be understood. From now on, the West and the countries of the West, as I commented on this today in the United States media, cannot consider Russia's war only against Ukraine, despite the fact that it is taking place on the territory of Ukraine and Russia, by the way. Yes, and you can't call it a Russian-Ukrainian war now, in any case. So what Russia has done, on the one hand, of course, is a deliberate step to escalate. It's not a mirror step, I'll explain later why, but what they have done is they have sent a signal to Europe, to the major nuclear capitals, London, Paris, the capital of the nuclear countries in Europe, and Washington, D.C. In fact, it is a signal to them, because whatever it is, whether it is a medium-range missile or an intercontinental missile, these are missile systems of strategic importance, missiles that carry nuclear warheads. This story ended only with Ukraine. Now the answer should come only from the nuclear countries, primarily from Washington. If it does not come, it will be a blow not only to Ukraine, but also on Washington. Now, with regard to the use of terms, I have said before, and I insist now, that Ukraine has no ballistic missiles. There are no long-range missiles, as they said. These missiles are not prohibited. That is, we have short-range missiles, which are missiles, according to the definitions in all treaties, up to 500 kilometers. We have not used anything more than that. That is, then there are medium-range and shorter-range missiles, which are 5,500 kilometers and less. So this is the INF treaty. The Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, which used to be in force for the United States and Russia, is no longer in force. So basically, Russia has withdrawn the weapons it had been building in violation of the treaty, or on the basis of previous Soviet missiles, and is now using intermediate-range missiles, ATACMS, missiles up to 500 kilometers, although we are still talking about 300. Ukraine had such missiles of its own, we used them. So this is not a mirror response. No, this is a deliberate raising of the stakes one step forward, or even two. And this is the main problem today in responding to Russia's aggression. All the other countries that have spoken out in support of Ukraine do not want to, cannot, or are not ready, or have not comprehended this threat. They do not want to make a mirror response. That's all. That is, Putin is always coming. If we personify him as the head of Russia, he goes one step further and always escalates. Putin is sick in the head and is ready to attack others, says Angela Merkel, mentioned by you, Mr. Ole. And this was my next question, too, because Angela Merkel's soul is pouring out of her memoirs, from which Die Zeit publishes excerpts. Former German Chancellor Angela Merkel, in her book, Freedom Memoirs 1954-2021, recalled the speech of the Russian dictator Putin at the 43rd Munich conference on February 10, 2007, one of those conferences where Putin said in his message, between the lines or even directly in essence, that I will fight indefinitely. Merkel recalls, I could see Putin well during his speech. He spoke quickly and probably wrote most, if not every word. Merkel was annoyed by Putin's confidence. Since he did not say a word about the unresolved conflicts in Nagorno-Karabakh, Moldova, and Georgia, some of the points in Putin's speech seemed absurd to Merkel. I perceived him as a person who is always on guard to avoid being treated badly. You can consider all this childish and reprehensible. You can shake your head, but it did not take Russia off the map. Merkel also explains in this memoir, why were we not invited to join NATO in 2008? Because it would have said yes to Putin's aggression. But the fact is that it did not remove Russia from the world map. Actions like those of Chancellor Angela Merkel, who cemented Russia on the world map, did not help destroy this empire and actually untied Putin's hands. Or did they restrain the aggressor? You know, I may not comment correctly because I haven't read it, but it can be done because we have just heard certain lines. First of all, it's an infantile position. I get the impression from these lines that she even liked him as a bad boy who scares the whole world, something or other. And now she has written about how something disgusted her, something else scared her, and so on.
Це вже зараз вона понаписувала про те, що щось викликало в неї огиду, щось іще страх і так далі. Та не було такого.
But it didn't happen. If it had, she would have reacted completely differently later. When she saw that people here were not shaking their heads, people were putting their heads down and dying because she was once afraid for someone. And she has a phrase that sometimes you have to think about NATO, not about the security of the country that is asking to join this alliance, a kind of billboard for this alliance. Because the alliance is a defense alliance with a capital D, and a country comes to you and asks to be placed under your umbrella, to defend and protect. And they say, no, 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 there is a big Russia, no one will take it off the map. And this is a key mistake of the Western world. And I emphasize that they believe that Russia should be there. Who told you that it should be there in this form? And who told you that there should be one? Whose memoirs do they write about it? I'm afraid that they won't write about Ukraine in their memoirs later, which we were afraid of too. We thought it would be like this, but it happened differently. There is no need for memoirs. Make history now. There is a chance to make history, and there is a chance to become historical figures like Churchill, not like Merkel. Scholz is playing Merkel right now, only on the lowest setting, or maybe more, we don't know. So I think that as long as the West believes that Russia has nuclear weapons within its borders, with such a people who tolerate everything that is being done, we do not believe Kara-Murza and Yashin that they are somehow separate. No, you are the same. You are fully responsible. And until the West realizes that it is dangerous to have such an empire, then they will have constant problems, as we are seeing now.
Тоді вони будуть мати постійні проблеми. І ми бачимо зараз, що Росія переносить
That Russia is shifting from hybridity to terrorist activities on the territory of Europe, in the seas, oceans, and so on. Isn't that enough? Then wait until such a dummy flies to you somewhere in Poland, where Russian propagandists are already telling you, or somewhere else, or we need to bomb America, it won't respond. Gurulov, another drunk, also told us this. Let's play it out. Let's play it out. And then we will watch the Third World War, not on TV and not in our wet fantasies, but in reality, in our windows. Then keep Russia on the map again, and then everything will be as I say.